The world of Diddy is what we're going to jump into, as it seems to be kind of a weekly thing now here on the program. Six new accusers. That's what we're seeing from Tony Buzbee, but that's just the tip of the iceberg of what's coming in this week. Accusations of sexual violence after someone saying that maybe you were involved in the murder of Tupac. That's coming out on a civil case, as well as many others. Joining us to discuss, Eric Faddis, defense attorney, former prosecutor. Give me some insight here. If you're the defense attorney of Sean Combs, I mean, this stuff just keeps pouring in. How would you handle this? I mean, you probably need an army at this point to be handling the volume of claims that are coming in.
Yeah, it is just a deluge of accusations and alleged evidence, that kind of thing. I think his defense team is going to take a number of positions. One is that a lot of this stuff didn't happen. They're going to say he's a rich, powerful dude. People are trying to get money from him.
Mhm.
If it did happen, it was consensual. And if you're saying it wasn't consensual, then someone other than Diddy was really at the helm and involved. I really think that that is going to be the structure of their defense paradigm going forward.
How are they going to do that, though? I mean, there's so many accusers. How do you? I mean, obviously they're going to say they're all lying, but in reality, you got this many. There's some that are real. There has to be, and probably a good chunk as well. So not only from a defense standpoint, but also from the prosecution standpoint, trying to bring these cases to have some legitimacy, to prove that they even took place. Some of these go back to like 1998. There is no digital footprint with that. The evidence, it's going to be, hearsay to a certain extent. What is going to be the key pieces that give some of these cases like some sort of solid ground of legitimacy as they try to argue their points?
These cases, just by their very nature, rely very largely on witness testimony. And so the government is going to have to get some witnesses who appear credible and compelling, remember details. And then they're going to sort of cross reference those witnesses. Accounts with factual evidence they have. Perhaps they have pictures
Mhm.
from older events. Perhaps during the raids they took pictures of rooms in which things allegedly occurred, and they're going to try to match that objective evidence up with the subjective evidence that the witnesses will present.
So, for example, we did see pictures just the other day here of the younger accuser who was 16 at the time. I believe it was 1998. He claims that Combs molested him while he was 16 at a white party of his. Claims that he was also targeting other minors there. And we see the picture. He was there. That we can prove now, at least. But now we're going to have to go into it. Well, it's a picture, a claim. It's not like a picture necessarily of him engaging in any sort of act with this accuser. Um, but that's where you're saying the other witness testimony may come into play. Like if this was kind of like how we're hearing his style of kind of an orgy-ish type thing going on, other people who may have been there saying, hey, I remember him there too. But who's going to want to raise their hand and say, I was there at the Diddy orgy? I bet I saw him there too. That's quite a witness that would come forward to even admit being anywhere near this scene.
Yeah, you wouldn't win any popularity contest, but nowadays by saying you attended a
Yeah.
Diddy party, they're going to look at that photo. One approach is to look at that photo, see if anyone else is depicted, identify those folks, go and interview them, and
Okay.
and it's really going to come down to these details investigatively that they're going to have to pursue, and it's going to be an uphill battle. Some of these folks will probably have moved, perhaps have died, so it's not going to be easy to prove, especially these older allegations.
And location is something that is important as well, as far as recalling location, recalling what did these scenes look like at the time they took place. Obviously, if you go into one of these rooms today, it probably doesn't look exactly the same as it did in 1998. Wild guess. Today it probably looks different, but if you have images, if you have other people who can corroborate what those rooms looked like, what this scene was where this alleged assault took place, how powerful is that if other people can say, yeah, I remember that room too, it looked like this, and something similar happened to me in this sort of a space? I mean, almost like we did see with the R. Kelly accusations, basically people describing his little lounge lair with the hot tub in the basement with the award in the background. That seems to be very powerful in that case of people saying, "Yeah, I was violated in that room." Are we going to see a similar type things here with the Diddy case?
Yeah, I think one approach is to, you have this criminal allegation, and then you have just surrounding details and circumstances. And so you try to corroborate those surrounding details and circumstances through witness, through other photographs. Maybe you look into magazines from that time. Maybe there is, video or photographic depiction of what happened, and you get as many consistencies as you can. And you tell the jury, hey, they're right on all of these consistent circumstances and details, makes it more likely that they're right about the incriminating allegation.
Sure. There's another accusation that came out this week. It's a fairly shocking one. I mean, it's hard to even say things are shocking anymore in the world of Diddy, but this one actually kind of did surprise me. The allegation essentially going, and I'm just kind of talking here, that Diddy assaulted a woman who essentially questioned his involvement in the murder of Tupac. The gist of the story is she was on a FaceTime call. Her friend was on a FaceTime call with Diddy. He was bragging, I'm friends with Diddy, blah, 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 blah. She says something, I don't want to talk to him. I think he has something to do with Tupac. Then shortly after that, they did come face to face, and she claims that she was drugged and then was assaulted by Diddy for those comments, basically as retribution for making those sort of comments. Um, Interesting, if true, very disturbing. And let's, for a moment, obviously, it's just an accusation right now, but let's just for the sake of conversation assume it's true. What does that tell us about his involvement with Tupac? I mean, what does that mean if he's violently raping someone for talking about his involvement with it, or assuming or alleging that he was involved in it?
Totally. I mean, think about it. Like, if someone accused me of trying to assassinate President Trump, and I knew I didn't do that, I wouldn't go and try to retaliate against that person. There's no merit to what they're saying. There's no evidence that they could get me on because I know I didn't do it. Whereas, if a person thinks that some sort of accusation might have some weight, then they would be more motivated to try to silence that person. And that's at least consistent with the concerns the judge had with not granting Diddy bond due to potential witness intimidation and victim intimidation.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, I've heard a lot of things in these cases. I haven't heard of that as being used as an intimidation factor, raping someone to keep them silent. I mean, I guess. I mean, I'm not surprised. It sounds horrible. I guess it could be a way of doing that. It's just so vile. I guess, and even darker than I think the stuff we've already heard about. Diddy.
Yeah, it almost reeks of like warfare tactics. Like you
Yeah,
think of like invaders and some battle going on, and to enhance intimidation, they engage in this kind of behavior.
yeah.
But this is just like a domestic person here in the states, and so yeah, certainly shocking if true.
And I'm not even sure what the. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying I doubt the victim. I don't know. I just don't know right now. But I am. I think it's fair to question all of these things. Why would Why would he do this to just some random woman who thinks that he might be involved? There's millions of people in this country who think he was involved. It's not going to move the needle. Her thinking that he's involved doesn't affect anything. It's not like her opinion is going to go start a prosecution against him for the murder of Tupac. That's why it just I don't know. There just doesn't seem to be a lot of reason why he would put himself into that situation. But at the same point, it seems he put himself into a lot of horrible situations violating women just for really no reason at all.
Yeah, totally. I mean, just speculating, but is it like if it did happen, would it be an ego thing? Would it be an I'm untouchable thing? Would it be like, hey, if you speak against me and I will come harm you with my, band of goons, and I don't care if you know about it, and I don't care, about nations because I'm Diddy. That's
Yeah.
at least one possible explanation, but another one is that it just didn't happen.
True. I mean that could be the case as well. Obviously, it is just an accusation. The only thing that can kind of my mind when I'm trying to unwrap this from a psychological standpoint is he's so insulated. He's in a world where no one tells him anything he doesn't want to hear, and so having that slip through of a comment on a Zoom call with his friend, maybe that was just so enraging because he never has to face that sort of stuff that maybe that did set him off in some sort of a way, that this was his retribution. Again, just conjecture, and trying to figure out, why he would be motivated to do something like that over just a random
Yeah,
citizen making these claims.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, based on the evidence, we know that he has some rage issues. We've
Yeah.
seen it. The world has seen it in the Cassie video. So, would I put it past him? No. But is there more investigation that needs to be done to substantiate it? Yes.
Yeah, without a doubt. Let's talk about another accusation that came out this week. This, I think, we could probably classify as our first big name celebrity that has a lawsuit against them now, civilly. Kanye West is who we're talking about. The allegation that he brought his former assistant to a Diddy party and at that Diddy party sexually assaulted her. That's the allegation. Doesn't seem that unplausible, considering it seems there allegedly have been a lot of celebrities that use the land of Diddy as a way to live out their sick fantasies of basically rape. Um, what's your take on this accusation? It's obviously another big name as of right now. Kanye has not responded to these accusations. What's your take?
I've in researching the complaint in that case, one thing it does cite to is actual screenshots of text messages between the assistant and Kanye. Now, I don't know that there's any text regarding this specific accusation, but just clearly like a toxic, over sexualized workplace environment.
Mhm.
On the other hand, some people are saying, hey, she filed this lawsuit in June and didn't include anything about the sex assault. Now she's sort of amended it in October and does include that. So some folks are saying, why didn't she include it back then? I'm sure there are multiple potential explanations.
Let's talk about some of those. What would be a potential explanation if you're already bringing a suit? Why not bring that into the suit? Right? Why not go guns blazing with everything? And why would you later add that in?
It's a fair point. Some might think, hey, you would want to come with your best ammunition to give you the most leverage in the lawsuit.
Mhm.
However, it's no secret that folks who come out and as victims of sexual assault aren't always treated that well, and there's
Sure.
a backlash. And perhaps it's not always worth it. Perhaps she thought the claim for the employment discrimination was strong enough
Mhm.
that she didn't have to out herself. But now, with more revelations coming out, she felt more comfortable to do so.
That's a fair argument. I mean, we were at a different time a couple months ago. All this was not out there quite yet. And if you're just going for employment, discrimination, yeah, you could probably argue that pretty well without having to expose, because you have to put yourself out there on the line, and it's not worth it to a lot of people. They've already been victimized. They've already gone through hell. Why go through it again? I mean, of course, you can argue that so a person is stopped and they can't violate other people. But again, it's a personal decision of do you want to put yourself through that again? Maybe she just saw it as a reason to do so. We're seeing a lot of accusations of not only people, but we're also seeing accusations of businesses now being named. We saw Macy's being named in one of these, accusing that Diddy was there promoting some of his Sean John products. Went back in the storeroom with a competitor and apparently allegedly violated him, having him do a sexual act on him while taunting about the brand name itself. Yeah, I mean, do you think we're going to see a lot of companies being thrown into this as well? I mean, I understand the record labels, basically shielding him, but now we're getting Macy's involved. God knows what else. Are there places these things could have occurred at?
I think it would not be surprising to see additional corporations being implicated. I mean, look, these corporations, especially like the highest level global corporations, they're doing their due diligence about sponsorships, about whom they're partnering with, about those people's backgrounds, about what they've allegedly been involved in. So I got to imagine that some of these high level corporations had knowledge or at least reports of what was allegedly going on and still move forward with the partnership, maybe even engaged in a cover up as it's alleged that Macy's did.
Let me switch the question up here a little bit to another issue here. It's something a lot of people are wondering about right now. Who are these people that are on these videos that are allegedly going to be shown at some point in time? Names going to be dropped. Um, for example, when you have someone like is being described in this one video of the A-lister that was questionable if they were of age at the time that the video was made, that they're very much regretful of this relationship. They just want to move on. And then you hear very similar story coming out of Justin Bieber's people, that it was his younger time. He doesn't want anything to do with this guy anymore. feels like feels victimized, that sort of stuff. Again, he's never said he was a victim of Diddy. I want to be clear on that, but just clearly wants to move on from his association with him. It sounds like a very similar story. So people are connecting dots, wondering, could it be Justin Bieber over there? Again, not proven, never said it was. Just, we're connecting dots here on what's out there. Could it be? Sure, anybody could be there. But individuals like that who would have been groomed from a very young age, like 14 with Bieber, let's say anybody who could have been in that position, groomed from that young age. They're looking at him like the superstar. This must be how the superstars live. This is how they party. This is how they live their life. And they don't really understand that this is really unhealthy behavior with these things going on. But then they find themselves wrapped up in it, maybe participating in it. Um, Now they're an adult. Now they're much older. They can look back and go, oh, shit, that was really dumb. What sort of culpability are people like that going to be facing if they're in these videos? Is there going to be grace for individuals like that when they can look back and go, yeah, you were virtually a kid, even if maybe you were 18, but this is the life that you were led to believe was okay? What do people like that do right now? Should people like that come forward and go, look, I was groomed. Here's what happened. And hope that they're going to get some mercy from the law rather than wait for the law to catch up with them and go, hey, you were doing some shady shit in this video. We got to talk to you. Not saying it's Bieber, not saying he did, but just theoretically, someone in that nature.
I think there's going to be a lot of innocent casualties that are occasioned as a result of this Diddy saga. There's going to be a lot of, or at least potentially, names disclosed, high profile folks who may have just been witnesses. They might not have had any participation that is, uncouth or any criminal liability. They might be victims.
Mhm.
And so those folks are still going to potentially have damage to their reputation. I don't know that they need to come forward now. If I were them, I would still probably lay low, and especially if I had no criminal involvement, just hope
Yeah.
that this blows over without some substantial impact to
Mhm.
careers.
What's your reaction to Diddy saying, I want the names released? He's speaking more specifically, not necessarily on the civil end, but that could very well be an argument as well, so they can prepare their cases. But on the federal and of who are we talking about here? I mean, they do have to prepare a case. They do have a right to defend him, and you can't go against a ghost.
Yeah, exactly. I think there is a legal and a pragmatic consideration to this request. The legal one is that defense is entitled to confront witnesses against them. They shouldn't have surprise witnesses at trial. The defense wasn't able to investigate. Perhaps one of these accusers has 5 prior charges for false reporting. I don't know that. I'm just
Mhm.
using that as a
Sure.
hypothetical, but that's something the defense should be entitled to. Pragmatically, some people are saying the defense is trying to do this in order to put negative pressure on accusers and essentially, make their lives shitty so that they would either, choose not to continue cooperating, or defense would gain some advantage. That's at least what some people have been talking about.
If these are the accusers, I guess the question would be, how are their lives going to be shitty? I don't think there's a whole lot of people on the Diddy bandwagon. That I mean, there may be some. I'm sure there probably are, but I mean, R. Kelly was a different scenario. There's still a lot of people who are still in R. Kelly's side, regardless. I don't really see that thus far in the Diddy side, but time will tell. I mean, if you were the victim, I see a lot of people being very sympathetic to that, not necessarily screw you for talking against Diddy. At least that's how I feel on the surface right now. There's always going to be some people out there. I just don't see it being a large group.
Oh, sure. No, and that certainly makes sense. But historically, people have come forward as victims of sex assault are sometimes, drugged through the coals, and
Yeah,
and people look into their backgrounds and their
sure.
sexual history, even if it has no relationship to the accusation at all. Sometimes it's such an invasion of privacy that these folks feel that pressure and are less inclined to cooperate. And I think that some argue that that's what Diddy's camp wants.
Do they have any choice if their name does get released by the federal government to the defense of Diddy or by the prosecutors to the defense of Diddy? I mean, and does it have to be public for that? I mean, I get they have to prepare for a case. That just needs to be. So eventually, these names will be released at the very minimum to Diddy's defense. Would that also then be released to the public? Is there any way around it not being released to the public once this all kind of starts coming out?
It's common for the prosecution to seek to retain anonymity for sexual assault victims, especially minors.
Mhm.
And so, what could happen is the prosecution could provide the identities to the defense sort of under seal, meaning only the defense gets it. And then the judge may even impose a gag order of sorts saying, hey, defense, you are not allowed to publicly out these accusers in this lawsuit.
Then they just have to hope and pray that nobody leaks it. That would be the other problem, which likely would.
And we've seen some leaks so far.
Yeah. So at some point, I think a lot of these names. What about civilly? When we have these Jane Does here for him trying to defend himself against the Jane and John Does on the civil cases, do those identities have to be revealed so they can properly defend him in a civil case?
On the civil side, that there's a higher likelihood of anonymity because there aren't the same constitutional protections for a civil defendant. Civil defendant doesn't necessarily have or can avail themselves of the full rights of the confrontation clause, and so they don't necessarily get the same degree and detail of information that a criminal defendant would.
So how would the defense of Diddy defend him? If would it just be on the merits of the case itself, and then maybe Diddy would know who it is based on the description of what's going on? If the allegations are in fact true, obviously, if they're not true, he would have no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah, right. That's the concern. I was talking about this with Nancy Grace this morning,
Yeah.
if like you said, if the allegation is not true, then he wouldn't have any knowledge of some non-event that never took place, and it's pretty hard to prove a negative to defend against that. Whereas if it was someone who was known to him, at least he could say, hey, around this time I was in Washington and I remember some encounter, whatever, but it was consensual. That's a route that he might take as well.
I mean, how would a court look at that versus, I was there, like, for example, on the criminal side, or actually on the civil side here, we do have one of the John Does that says, here's a picture. It's me and him at the party. So we have that. We know we can place him. He was at the actual event itself. It doesn't necessarily mean anything happened, though. It just means he was at the party by that picture. So how would Diddy defend himself? You have a piece like that where you have some things where you can place the accuser at least there versus one where there's nothing to really place them there. Diddy can simply say, I wasn't there. I don't remember this. I don't know anything about this. Is that just the defense of, I got nothing? I mean, I got nothing defense. I
Well,
wasn't there.
Potentially, in both the criminal and the civil context, the burden is on the plaintiff. And so the burden is essentially on the accuser in these civil sides to come with the evidence. And then Diddy has to play some defense. He's going to have to see what these allegations are, look at the details, see what can be disproven. See, he might try to attack the characters of these accusers. There are certain avenues you can take in addition to saying, I've got nothing. I wasn't involved in this, or this didn't happen.
Probably one of the bigger ones I would think would be just location. Was he there at this place at this time? I would imagine someone like Diddy probably has a pretty good log of showing where he was on any given day. Granted, it's coming from his source, so I mean they could mess with the logs, I guess, and change it to where they were. But I suppose more so. I mean, this is a man who's photographed everywhere he goes. There'd probably be some way to prove he was over here. Look, here's pictures of him in Maine or something when somebody's saying something happened in L.A. That would probably be one of his best defenses if it exists.
Totally. He kind of has an advantage due to his celebrity status on that issue
Mhm.
because his whereabouts have been well documented for decades.
Yeah.
And so he can use that to his advantage. And then also that they've done too is they've interviewed, the defense has, some of these accusers acquaintances and people around them, and tried to get, dirt on the accusers and even some damaging information about the accusers credibility.
Mhm.
And so certainly Diddy's team is working nonstop to try and field the panoply of different accusations coming at him.
There's just so much every single week. It's yeah. He's got a billion bucks now, but I can't imagine that number is going to stay stable for any time soon. Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski, and you'll find us right there. Again, Thanks for watching.